The alarm goes off at 4 a.m., and you're too tired for any coherent thought except to wonder what possible string of bad choices could have led you to this moment. But it's too late for that now. You throw in your clothes, lace up your shoes, and make your way to the starting line. It's time to go. Welcome to my figurative and literal marathon of a year. Mile 1. After months of the same familiar runs, you're finally on new terrain. After deciding to take a gap year last September, I got my first glimpse of adult life. It was weird not to be going to school for the first time ever, but I was excited about living in San Francisco and interning at a small satellite startup called OrbitFab. Mile 5. You know that there's so much ahead of you still, but for now, you feel good. Over the next few months, I gradually became more comfortable and confident at OrbitFab. I was hired as a dorm RA at Stanford, and I was elected co-president of the Stanford Student Space Initiative, SSI. All is going well until you see it, the first big hill. It disappears up into the clouds like it's Mount Olympus, and you have no faith that you'll ever see the top. But on you must go. You take a shuddering breath and begin to climb. Winter quarter was rough. Stanford's strict COVID policies made it almost impossible to spend time with my dorm residents. The satellite we were building at OrbitFab was rapidly approaching the handoff date, and we were working back-to-back 70-hour weeks. I was also the only woman on OrbitFab's engineering team, and I constantly felt the pressure of representing an entire gender with my abilities. I was falling behind in SSI, struggling to keep up with my roles as both co-president and Rockets team co-lead. Sometimes I was overwhelmed by stress and exhaustion, but other times all I needed was to see it from the other side. The satellite OrbitFab was building would become the world's first propellant depot in space, and I became one of its 4 primary engineers. During those crazy long weeks, I got to literally build and test a satellite with my own 2 hands. And after years of being in SSI and dreaming up things I wanted to do, I finally got the chance. And somewhere in the middle of this crazy mess, despite the fact that I hadn't run seriously in almost 3 years, I decided it might be fun to run the San Francisco Marathon. Mile 13.1, the halfway mark. The world seems brighter, and for the very first time, you actually believe that you might finish. Spring came, restrictions loosened, and RAing became so much better. I took classes about writing and human rights and design, and remembered how fun it can be to create. To my own surprise, I actually began to train for the marathon. I handed off the reins of SSI Rockets and dove fully into my presidency. And I kept working at OrbitFab, following our satellite through every stage of its life. And when the time came to send it to Cape Canaveral to integrate it onto the launch vehicle, I got to go with it. I've dealt with a lot of uncertainty about my career and whether I belong in this industry, and integrating in Florida was the first time I could really see my future. My team and I went from all-night hazardous fueling operations to spontaneous dinner parties with other companies to swimming in the Atlantic at 2 a.m. It was fun and exciting, and I thrived on the chaos. Mile 20. You can't believe you've actually made it this far. After a whirlwind few weeks, I went back to Florida, this time for launch. We had a few last-minute delays, including a truly heartbreaking no-go with less than 15 seconds left. But finally, I watched the product of my literal blood, sweat, and tears, something I'd been part of from the start, something I'd built with my own 2 hands, go to real, actual space. Nothing prepared me for the emotional overload, and all I could hope was that I never outgrow this feeling. The last 6 miles. You want nothing else in the world except to be done, but you're also trying to appreciate how far you've come. Over the summer, I started a new job as a structural intern at Boeing. After months of planning, my co-president and I made major changes to SSI's infrastructure, and I designed a new onboarding process to make joining SSI more accessible to people with no technical background. And I did lots and lots of running. I spent long days and nights running double-digit miles alone in pursuit of a goal that still sounded insane. And I had some fun. 26.2, the end. Finally, the day came. I packed up all my stuff one more time and drove back to Stanford. Far too many people were far too surprised to hear I was planning on running a marathon, but I've always loved proving people wrong. The weekend was a whirlwind of getting ready for school on Monday and intense marathon panic. And then it was 4 a.m. and I was pinning on my number and questioning every life decision I'd ever made, but there was no turning back now. I'll never forget it. My friends and family, including a surprise visit from my little brother, lined the streets to cheer me on. I ran very, very slowly. But I ran. And in a mere 5 hours and 45 minutes, I finished. I cried running towards the finish line, and I cried after. Part of me still can't believe I did it. Finishing was proof that I can do crazy things if I'm just stubborn enough to follow them through. Proof that I'm mentally strong, and proof to myself and others, I hope, that you can be an athlete without looking the way most people think an athlete should look. I was happy, I was exhausted, and most of all, I was done. But what comes next? After a marathon, you have to limp out of bed the next morning and keep on going. For me, this meant diving right back into life at Stanford. A bunch of new classes, starting at the Women's Leadership Innovation Lab, and prepping for more than 100 new members to join SSI in person. Marathon recovery is all about remembering the pain while still reveling in the high of finishing. It's about looking back and thinking, it's so crazy that I did that. I can't believe I made it through. I'm so glad it's over. But in the back of your mind, wondering what it would be like to do it all again.